Okay, so now you know the four basic sentence structures. You should know independent clause, dependent clause, pronoun as subject, coordinating conjunctions, and subordinating conjunctions. Last thing I want to talk about are the dreaded run-on sentence. So anytime you're trying to join two complete sentences, you might run into this issue of a run-on sentence. So a run-on sentence is not what most people think. Most people think it's a run-on sentence anytime it's a really long sentence, but that's not the case. You can have a very short sentence and it could be a run-on sentence. Basically, run-on sentence is when you are not correctly joining two independent clauses. So you're going to run into that problem anytime you are using the compound sentence structure or the compound complex sentence structure. So here are your run-on notes, okay? So we're going to say run-on sentences. So a run-on sentence is when you are... No, she has it out there somewhere. Where'd you put it, babe? So run-on sentence is anytime, we'll say two independent clauses are incorrectly joined. So let's give an example here. There are two types of run-on sentences. One, you have what's called a comma splice. Okay. Now the comma splice is when you join two independent clauses with a comma. Okay, so here's an example. Allie eats bananas, comma, she eats apples. Notice I have one independent clause, subject, verb, finished thought, Allie eats bananas. And then I have another one, she eats apples, period. And here's a comma joining these two. That is called a comma splice because you're using the comma to splice together these two independent clauses. So an easy fix would be to change this comma to a semicolon. Done. That's correct. Okay, let's go back and let's say you didn't use a semicolon. You don't want to use a semicolon. So instead, what you could do is use one of your fanboys. So Allie eats bananas, comma, and she eats apples. So you need both of these. When you're joining independent clauses, you need the comma plus the fanboy. Okay? Now, you know, you're not always going to use a comma anytime you have a fanboy or a coordinating conjunction. Okay, for instance, you could say a sentence like this. Allie eats apples and bananas, period. Right? So notice I don't need a comma between apples and the word and. Okay, so you would never do this. Allie eats apples, comma, and bananas. You don't need that because you're using a conjunction to join these two, right? These two words, apples with bananas. She eats apples and bananas. But when you have two independent clauses, this comma is not strong enough on its own to join them, right? Because if you just use a comma, you have a comma splice. And then the word and is not strong enough either. So you need both of them. They kind of like partners. Okay, they work together to join two independent clauses. Allie eats bananas, comma, and she eats apples. Okay, so that's the comma splice. The second one is what's called the fused sentence. Okay. So the fused sentence is when you join two independent clauses with nothing. They run into each other. Okay? So here's an example for this one. A fused sentence would be, Allie eats bananas. She eats apples. Okay, and sometimes we use the fused run-on sentence because we're not going back. We don't proofread our writing. But when you proofread your writing, most of the time you'll correct a refused run-on sentence. So Allie eats bananas. You can do any number of things here. Allie eats bananas, semicolon, she eats apples. You could do Allie eats bananas, comma, fanboy, so comma, and she eats apples. You could even separate the two. Allie eats bananas, period, capitalize the next word. She eats apples. Okay? It just depends on the desired effect that you have as a writer. So those are the two types of run-on sentences. It's a comma splice or a fused sentence. You should be able to identify them in your writing and be able to correct them. Let me know if you got any questions.